He turned to her, the weight of his decision lifting from his shoulders, replaced by a sense of unwavering purpose. "I'll stay," he said, his voice resolute. "I'll stand with you, Lysira. I won't let the Varelians fall. I won't let humanity fall. Together, we will protect this galaxy from those who would exploit its power." A smile, one that was equal parts relief and determination, spread across Lysira's face. "Then we are ready," she said, her voice filled with both hope and the quiet knowledge that this was just the beginning. "The final battle is coming. We must be prepared, for the marauders, for those who seek to control what they do not understand. But we will fight with everything we have." The sounds of the approaching forces, both the marauders and the galaxy's watchful eyes, grew louder, but Jace and Lysira stood firm. They had made their decision. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity was no longer a mere observer of the stars. It was now a force to be reckoned with. The Varelians' power, combined with humanity's resilience, would create a new future, one where their enemies would either fall in line or face their destruction. As they stood side by side, prepared to face whatever came next, Jace realized something else. Their bond wasn't just about the survival of a species, it was about the survival of the galaxy itself. Together, they would be the spark that ignited a fire of change that would spread across the stars. And with that, they marched forward, unstoppable. The calm before the storm was unlike any Jace had ever known. The palace, once a symbol of peace and hope, now stood as a fortress in the face of a coming reckoning. The marauders, though beaten back once, had only grown more determined. The whispers of their defeat had spread, but so had the rumors of the true power hidden beneath the palace. The galaxy, threatened by the Varelians' ancient energy, stirred with fear, and now it was clear that an even greater conflict loomed on the horizon. Jace stood at the edge of the palace balcony, looking out over the vast landscape below. His thoughts were a storm of their own. The power of the Varelians was undeniable, and he had witnessed its potential firsthand. But the cost of wielding that power was a burden he had never anticipated. Now, the weight of his decision bore down on him more heavily than any battle ever could. Lysira approached silently, her steps light but resolute. She, too, had felt the magnitude of the choice they faced. Her presence was both a comfort and a reminder of the incredible responsibility now resting between them. She had trusted Jace with the secret of her people, and now she trusted him with the future of all that remained of the Varelians. Jace turned to her as she stood beside him, the silence stretching between them. He could see the weariness in her eyes, the toll of the battles they had fought, both external and internal. And yet, despite it all, she was still standing, still determined. She had always been more than just a survivor. She was a leader, a beacon of hope for her people. And now, in a way, he had become her partner in that fight. "Lysira," he began, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the decision he had yet to make. "I've been thinking about everything. About the Varelians, about humanity, about the future. I'm not just a soldier anymore. I'm standing at the crossroads of two worlds, one that's mine and one that's yours. I could return to Earth, to the life I knew. I could take everything I've learned and live in a world where none of this would ever have to be. But there's something pulling me here, something telling me that this fight is where I'm meant to be." Lysira's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder, the gesture a mixture of understanding and silent strength. "You've already made your choice, Jace. I can see it in your eyes. And you're not alone. Whatever you decide, we will face it together. But you must understand, this isn't just a battle for us. This is a battle for the future, for humanity, for the Varelians, for all who have ever been oppressed by those who would misuse power." Jace nodded, his heart heavy with the realization of the gravity of their situation. "If I stay, it won't just be to fight for your people, Lysira. It'll be to fight for all of us. The galaxy won't just fear the Varelians anymore. They'll fear humanity too. And if we don't stand together, if we don't unite, right here, right now, then all of this, all the power, will be lost. I can't let that happen. Lysira's gaze never wavered as she met his eyes, the fire of resolve igniting in them both. "And you won't," she said, her voice fierce. "We won't. Together, we are unstoppable. Together, we will show the galaxy that no one, not the marauders, not any force of fear or oppression, can stand against us." Jace's pulse quickened as his decision became clear. The future that lay ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers that neither of them could fully comprehend. But one thing was certain: he couldn't face it alone, and neither could Lysira. Their bond, forged in the crucible of battle, had become something unbreakable. They were not just allies, they were partners, a force united by a shared destiny, a shared purpose. And no matter the odds, they would fight for that future. After a long pause, Lysira finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost tentative, as though she were unsure of how to begin. "Jace," she said, her eyes lifting to meet his, "there is something I must tell you, something I have kept hidden for a long time." Jace turned to face her, his expression curious yet gentle. He had been waiting for this moment, sensing that there was more to her story. He nodded, encouraging her to continue. Lysira took a deep breath, steadying herself. "My people, the Varelians, are not what you think. We are the last of a species that once spanned the galaxy, a species that held the knowledge of intergalactic travel and the secrets of immense energy, powers that allowed us to shape the very fabric of space itself." She paused, as if weighing the gravity of her words. "But we have been hunted, scattered, and nearly wiped out. I am the last one left, the last Virelian alive." Jace's breath caught in his throat. He had always known Lysira was special, but hearing this revelation of her true nature, left him stunned. His mind raced as he tried to process the enormity of her words. "But how?" he asked, struggling to find the right question. "How is it possible that you're the last of your kind? And why didn't you tell me before?" Lysira's gaze softened, and she looked down at the ground, almost as if ashamed. "I never wanted you to see me as a burden," she whispered. "I didn't want you to carry the weight of my past. But now you must understand something. By saving me, you've unlocked a path that could change everything." Jace's brow furrowed. "Unlocked a path? What do you mean?" Lysira stood, her expression serious now, her eyes filled with a determination Jace had rarely seen. "The energy core beneath this palace, beneath everything you see here, is the key to advancing humanity. It holds the power to catapult your species into a new era, to give you the ability to travel the stars and harness energy like you've never imagined. This core is what has kept my people alive for centuries, what allowed us to survive the destruction of our kind. But only one person can use it, the one who has awakened it." Jace stared at her, his mind reeling. "You're saying that I unlocked this power?" Lysira nodded. "Yes. By saving me, you have unknowingly bound your fate to this power. You have the ability to use it, to change the course of history for your people. Humanity could take its place among the stars, among the greatest civilizations the galaxy has ever known. But there is a cost, Jace." Jace's heart raced. He could feel the weight of the decision before him, the magnitude of what Lysira was telling him. But he couldn't deny the truth in her words. The potential for human civilization to advance, to reach for the stars, was something he had always dreamed of. And yet, the responsibility of wielding such power, it was more than he had ever imagined. Lysira stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. "To use this power, you must accept the role of a leader, Jace. You must protect me and my people at all costs. You are now bound to the Varelians, to the future of our species, and in return, you will have the chance to reshape your destiny. But the choice is yours. You can return to your world, to your life, and leave all of this behind. Or you can stay, and together we can forge a future that will change the galaxy forever." Jace's mind swirled. The possibilities were endless, but so was the sacrifice. The future he had once known, the life he had left behind, seemed so far away now. Could he really turn his back on everything? Could he walk away from the chance to lead humanity into a new age? And could he really leave Lysira, the woman who had saved him, to face her destiny alone? He met her gaze, his decision already beginning to take shape. "I can't just walk away, Lysira," he said, his voice steady. "I've seen what you've done. I've seen the power you wield. I can't let this fall apart. I'll stay. Together, we'll make sure humanity stands with the stars." A small, relieved smile tugged at Lysira's lips. "You've made your choice, then. We'll face whatever comes together." She placed a hand on his shoulder, the weight of the moment settling between them. "The future is ours to shape, Jace, and I will stand by you, no matter what." Jace nodded, the weight of his decision still heavy in his chest, but resolute in his heart. He had chosen a new path, one that intertwined his fate with Lysira's and the future of an entire species. Together, they would change the course of history, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Lysira's eyes flashed with concern, but she didn't stop. She was relentless, her every movement filled with an unyielding will to protect their home. Yet the marauders weren't fazed. They seemed to know their tactics well, anticipating every counterattack, every retreat. Their relentless pursuit was starting to take its toll. Jace's breathing grew heavier, his body worn from the constant fighting. In a sudden moment of weakness, a marauder's energy blast caught him square in the chest. He was thrown back, crashing to the ground with a sickening thud. Pain shot through his ribs, and the world around him blurred as he struggled to rise. "Jace!" Lysira's voice rang out, sharp with panic. She moved quickly to his side, but the marauders were closing in. They were too many. Lysira's heart pounded in her chest. She had never felt fear like this. The weight of the situation pressed down on her. Jace was down, and she was alone against an army that seemed to know her every move. But in that moment of desperation, something inside her shifted. There was a connection she had never fully understood, a bond that linked her to the planet itself. She had always sensed it, felt it deep within her being. Now in this critical moment, it was calling to her. The ground beneath her feet seemed to hum, and the air around her thickened. Her hands rose instinctively, and the waters of the nearby river began to respond to her call. Jace, struggling to stand, saw what was happening. The river near them surged, its waters rising like a living thing, twisting and curling as though under Lysira's command. With a fierce cry, she thrust her hands forward, and the water surged forward, crashing into the marauders with a ferocity that stunned even Jace. The enemy was caught off guard. The water rose in walls, surging over their weapons and armor, knocking them off their feet. It was as if the very planet had come to their aid, and Lysira had become its instrument of vengeance. Jace watched in awe as the once unbeatable invaders were overwhelmed by the power of nature itself. But the victory was short-lived. The power Lysira had tapped into was immense, and it drained her. Her body trembled as the energy left her, leaving her gasping for breath. The water receded, leaving the marauders temporarily disoriented, but far from defeated. As the waters began to settle, Lysira fell to her knees, exhaustion written across her face. "Lysira!" Jace shouted, crawling toward her despite the pain that racked his body. He could see the toll her power had taken on her. She had saved him, but at what cost? "I'm fine," she whispered, though the weakness in her voice betrayed her words. She tried to push herself up, but her body refused to cooperate. Jace shook his head, his heart heavy with worry. He had never seen her like this, vulnerable, spent, but he also understood now, more than ever, just how powerful she was. The power she wielded was no mere gift. It was a force of nature, and it was clear that she could call upon it when all hope seemed lost. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The marauders were not the kind to retreat for long, and now they knew that Lysira's power was something they would have to reckon with. Jace helped her to her feet, determination hardening in his eyes. The battle had just begun, and there was no turning back now. "We'll face them together," Jace said, his voice firm. Lysira nodded, though her energy was nearly spent. "Together," she echoed, her grip on him tightening. They had to survive this. For the palace, for their people, and for each other. The cost of victory was high, but the price of failure would be even higher. The battle had left its marks, on the walls of the palace, on the land surrounding it, and on the hearts of Jace and Lysira. They had fought side by side, pushed to their limits, but in the aftermath, a heavy silence settled between them. The dust of the battle had barely begun to settle, and yet the weight of what had transpired hung thick in the air. Lysira, still recovering from the immense toll of her power, sat on a stone bench within the palace, her eyes distant, lost in thought. Jace stood nearby, his body battered but still standing, gazing out over the horizon. The marauders had retreated for now, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they would return. His mind, however, was not focused on the next battle. It was on Lysira. He could sense that something had shifted between them, something deeper than just the bond forged in the heat of combat. She had saved him, yes, but she had also shown him a side of herself that was far more powerful than anything he had ever imagined. And now, as the silence stretched between them, he couldn't help but wonder if there was more to their connection than either of them had realized. Jace stared at the heart of the ocean, its soft, blue glow flickering like a heartbeat. He had always been the one to lead, the one to make decisions for others. But this felt like something that was beyond his control, something too big for him to decide on his own. "I didn't ask for this," Jace said quietly, more to himself than to Lysira. "I didn't come here to save anyone. I just wanted to get my crew out of here alive." Lysira stepped forward and placed her hand on his arm, her touch warm and reassuring. "I know you didn't, but sometimes the universe makes decisions for us. Sometimes we don't get a choice. All you can do is decide what kind of person you want to be." Jace looked into her eyes, and for the first time since they had met, he saw something more than just an alien princess. He saw someone who had lived through pain, through loss, and now someone who was desperately fighting for survival. She wasn't asking him to be a hero. She was asking him to be a protector. "I can't promise I'll make the right choice," Jace said, his voice low, but determined. "But I'll try. I'll help you. I'll do what I can." Lysira smiled softly, a tear glistening in her eye. "That's all I can ask." For a moment, they stood there in silence, the soft glow of the heart filling the room. Jace's mind was a storm of thoughts and emotions. He didn't know what the future held, and he didn't know if he was strong enough to face the choice that was coming. But in that moment, he made a decision. He would fight for this world, for Lysira, and for the galaxy, no matter what it cost him. Then, a loud rumble shook the chamber, and the ground beneath them trembled. Jace staggered, almost losing his balance. Lysira's face drained of color as the rumbling grew louder. The heart flickered, its blue light pulsing erratically. "What's happening?" Jace shouted, his heart pounding in his chest. "The planet is reacting," Lysira gasped. "Something is coming. It's too late to turn back. The enemies we've been running from are here." Before Jace could ask more, the entrance to the chamber exploded open. A group of armored soldiers stormed in, their weapons raised, their eyes glowing with malice. They were not from this planet. Their uniforms were dark, their faces hidden behind masks. "Get away from the heart, Varelian," one of them growled, his voice distorted by the mask. "The heart belongs to us now." Jace's heart raced. He had no idea who these enemies were or how they had found them, but it was clear they were here for the heart, and they were ready to fight for it. "Get ready," Jace yelled to Lysira, pulling out his blaster. "We're not going down without a fight." The sun had barely risen over the palace when the first wave of marauders descended upon it. Their ships darkened the sky, casting ominous shadows over the sprawling structures below. Jace stood at the ready, his eyes scanning the horizon, knowing that the calm before the storm had come to an end. Beside him, Lysira's sharp gaze matched his, her tense posture signaling that she was prepared for anything. Without warning, the first strike hit. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the marauders breached the palace's perimeter. Their advanced weapons unleashed waves of energy, cutting through the defenses as though they were made of paper. The invaders moved in organized formations, their every move calculated with precision. Jace and Lysira sprang into action. With blinding speed, they charged forward, striking the marauders with everything they had. Jace's fighting style was brutal and direct, while Lysira's elegance in combat was like a dance, each movement deliberate and powerful. The two of them worked in perfect sync, cutting down enemies left and right. The marauders, however, were not easily deterred. They kept coming, wave after wave, forcing the pair to retreat further into the heart of the palace. It was then that Jace saw it, the enemy's technology. As he cut through a group of marauders, he caught sight of a device strapped to one of their arms. It pulsed with an unnatural energy, releasing waves of force that sent enemies flying and scattered their ranks with ease. In that moment, Jace realized how outmatched they truly were. The invaders had technology beyond anything they had ever faced. The palace walls that had once stood so strong now seemed weak, crumbling under the pressure of this new assault. "We can't keep this up," Jace shouted, his voice strained as he dodged a blast that nearly hit him. He felt a searing pain in his side as a shard of debris grazed him. His movements slowed for just a moment, but it was enough. Jace looked at her, confusion still on his face. "But I thought you said your people were in danger. You don't seem to be dying to me." Lysira's face hardened. "We are dying. The heart of the ocean is losing its power. It's been slowly draining for years, and now it's at its breaking point. If it dies, my people die with it. The galaxy doesn't know it, but the balance of life here, on this planet, affects everything. If the Varelians fall, it will set off a chain reaction. Other planets will be affected. The galaxy will be thrown into chaos." Jace stepped closer, studying the glowing crystal. It was beautiful, yes, but it also seemed fragile. He could sense the energy within it, pulsing weakly. It wasn't the powerful force that Lysira had described. It looked like it was fading. "So, what do we do?" he asked, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Lysira stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the crystal. "There's a way to restore it, but it requires a sacrifice. The one who saves the heart must give something of themselves, something that can never be returned. It's the price of saving my people." Jace's stomach churned. "What kind of sacrifice? What are you talking about?" Lysira turned to face him, her eyes filled with sorrow. "The heart draws its power from the bloodline of my people. Only someone from the royal family can truly restore it. But the cost is great. Once the heart is restored, the one who does it must stay with it forever. They become part of the energy, part of the heart itself. Their life is linked to the planets, and they can never leave." Jace felt a lump form in his throat. He didn't understand how this was possible, but the weight of her words hit him hard. If they wanted to save the Varelians, someone would have to make a terrible sacrifice. And Jace realized that the fate of everything, of this world, of Lysira, and of the galaxy, was now in his hands. Jace felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The words Lysira had just spoken hung in the air, like a dark cloud. The idea that someone like him, would have to sacrifice everything to save this alien world was almost too much to bear. He had always been just a soldier, a captain, following orders, doing what he was trained to do. But this was something entirely different. It was bigger, more complicated, and far more dangerous than anything he had ever faced. "So," Jace began, his voice rough, "you're telling me that someone has to stay here forever, to give their life to this heart of the ocean, to save your people?" Lysira nodded, her expression sad but resolute. Yes, the heart is dying, and only someone from the royal bloodline can restore it. But the price is steep. Once the heart is restored, the one who does it becomes part of it. They are bound to the planet, to the ocean, forever. Jace took a step back, his mind racing. The idea of never leaving, of being bound to a place he didn't even understand, made him feel trapped. The choice felt impossible, and yet something deep inside him told him that it was a choice he would have to make. "What if we don't do anything?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with doubt. "What happens if we let the heart die?" Lysira's face grew pale. She stepped closer, her eyes filled with sorrow. "If the heart dies, my people will perish. The Varelians have lived in harmony with the planet for centuries, but we can't survive without the heart's energy. We will fade away, and the balance of this world will be lost. If that happens, the effects will ripple through the galaxy. Whole civilizations could be wiped out. The balance of life here, it's tied to everything, to the very stars themselves." Jace swallowed hard. He had never been one for big speeches or saving entire species, but what Lysira was telling him felt too important to ignore. The consequences of inaction were too great. The galaxy, planets, people, everything would be affected. He had to do something. But the price was steep. "I can't believe this is real," Jace muttered, running a hand through his hair. "How can I make a choice like that? You're asking me to give up everything. My life, my future, everything." "I don't want you to sacrifice yourself, Jace," Lysira said quietly, her voice filled with pain. "But this is not just about you and me. It's about all of us. It's about my people, and it's about the future. You have a chance to save us, and I won't ask you to make this choice unless you're ready." After a long pause, Jace let out a deep breath. "All right, I'll help, but I don't know anything about prophecies or royal lines or whatever you're talking about. All I know is I can't just leave you here." Lysira's face lit up with a soft, grateful smile, and she stepped forward, placing her hand on his chest. "Thank you, Jace. You don't know how much this means to me." For the first time since they had met, Jace allowed himself to feel something more than confusion and doubt. There was something about her, about this whole situation, that called to him. Maybe he wasn't a hero. Maybe he wasn't the savior of an ancient race. But one thing was clear. He had a responsibility now, and he wasn't about to back down from it. Lysira's voice broke the silence. "There is much more you need to know. We must go to my sanctuary, deep beneath the oceans. There you will learn the truth of what is at stake." Jace nodded. "Lead the way." As they began walking toward the horizon, Jace's thoughts were heavy with uncertainty. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was for sure. This was no ordinary rescue, and his life would never be the same again. The journey to Lysira's sanctuary was long and dangerous. As they made their way through the dense forest, Jace couldn't help but feel like something big was coming. He had agreed to help her, but the weight of that decision was starting to sink in. She had told him that his rescue of her had set things in motion, things that neither of them fully understood yet. He had no idea what kind of power or secrets this place would hold, but he was beginning to realize it was more than just a simple mission. Lysira led the way, moving with grace and confidence. Her glowing skin seemed to blend with the environment around her, as though she was part of the planet itself. Every step she took felt purposeful, as though she knew exactly where she was going. Jace followed her closely, trying to keep up, though the dense jungle and steep hills slowed him down. His thoughts were racing. What had he gotten himself into? How was he supposed to help save an entire species when he barely understood what they needed saving from? They reached the edge of a vast cliff, and Jace paused to catch his breath. Below them, the ocean stretched out, its waves crashing against the jagged rocks. It was beautiful, but the sight of the water made him uneasy. Lysira turned back to him, her expression serious. "We're almost there," she said. The entrance is hidden beneath the waves. Follow me closely." Without waiting for a response, she stepped to the edge of the cliff and dove into the water. Jace stood frozen for a moment, unsure if he should follow. But then he remembered the weight of his promise to her. He had chosen to stay, and that meant facing whatever came next. He took a deep breath and jumped in after her. The cold water hit him like a punch to the chest, but he quickly regained his composure. As he swam deeper into the ocean, he saw Lysura ahead of him, her body moving effortlessly through the water. It was as though she was born for this, as though the ocean was her true home. Jace struggled to keep up, but he followed her as best he could. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a massive underwater cave. The entrance was hidden beneath a blanket of coral, and the moment they swam through, Jace felt a shift in the atmosphere. The water was warmer, and the cave glowed with a soft, eerie light. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Lysura led him through the winding tunnels, her movements smooth and sure. The walls were covered in glowing patterns, strange symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. The deeper they went, the more Jace could feel the power of the place. It wasn't just the cave that was alive. It was the very air, the water, the energy around them. He couldn't explain it, but he could sense that something ancient and powerful was here, something far beyond his understanding. Finally, they arrived at a massive chamber. The water here was still like a pond, and in the center of the room was a huge stone pedestal. On it lay a glowing crystal, pulsating with light. It looked like nothing Jace had ever seen, smooth, perfect, and radiating a soft, blue light that filled the room with a calm energy. "This is the heart of the ocean," Lysura said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is the source of our power. It has been here for centuries, hidden deep beneath the water. It sustains my people, gives us strength. Without it, we will wither and die." But Lysura's gaze remained intense. "You do not understand. My people are in danger. And now you are part of that danger, and part of our salvation." Jace was about to speak, to ask her more questions, but he saw something in her eyes. She wasn't just speaking out of gratitude. There was fear there, deep and real. Something was coming. Something bad. The air between them was thick with tension. Jace didn't know what was going to happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. His life had just changed in ways he couldn't even imagine. And Lysura, the woman he had saved, was at the heart of it all. Jace couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. After saving Lysura, the beautiful alien woman who seemed more than just grateful, everything felt strange. She was calm now, but there was an intensity in her eyes, something he couldn't understand. As they sat on the edge of the beach, the ocean waves gently lapping against the shore, Lysura turned to face him with a serious expression. "You don't understand," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper as the wind carried her words away. "You saved me, Jace, and for that, you have earned an ancient debt." Jace frowned, confused. "A debt? I told you, I was just doing what anyone would have done. I'm no hero." But Lysura shook her head slowly. "It's not that simple. You don't know the customs of my people. When someone saves a life, it creates a bond that cannot be broken. Not now. Not ever." Jace stared at her, trying to wrap his mind around what she was saying. It felt like a story from a book, something made up. But her eyes, filled with sincerity, told him she wasn't joking. This was serious to her, maybe even life or death serious. "Okay," Jace said, standing up and brushing off the sand from his uniform. "What does this debt mean? You're saying I can't just walk away?" Lysura stood as well, taking a step closer. The soft glow of her skin shone brighter under the sunlight, and Jace couldn't help but be in awe of her beauty. But there was more than beauty in her eyes. There was an urgency, a sense of something dark and dangerous on the horizon. "You cannot walk away," she said firmly. "Not now that you've saved me. My people, the Varelians are facing an ancient prophecy. The prophecy says that the last of our bloodline, the royal line, will be saved by a hero from the stars. You, Jace, are that hero. Jace's heart skipped a beat. He shook his head in disbelief. Wait, hold on. What are you talking about? I'm just a guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. I'm no hero. I don't know anything about prophecies or your people or any of that stuff. Lysira's expression softened for a moment, and she gently placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to believe in the prophecy, but it's real. And it's not just a myth. My people are in danger, Jace. We've been hunted for centuries, our history lost, our power forgotten. I'm the last of my royal line. If I die, everything we've worked for, everything my people have fought for, will be lost. Jace felt a chill run down his spine. So, you think I'm supposed to save you and your entire race? Is that what this is? Lysira nodded, her gaze never leaving his. Yes. The Varelians have always been connected to the planet's energy, to the oceans, to the very life force of this world. Our power is tied to the water itself. But if we don't restore balance soon, if we don't find the source of our strength, it will be too late. My people will fade away, and the galaxy will forget we ever existed. Jace was silent for a long moment. The waves crashing on the shore seemed to echo in his mind. He had signed up for adventure when he joined the military, but he never expected anything like this. He never expected to find himself in the middle of a prophecy or tied to an alien species survival. I didn't sign up for this, he muttered, more to himself than to her. I came here because I had to, not because I'm supposed to be the answer to some prophecy. I know, Lysira replied softly, but that's the way it is now. And you have a choice, Jace. You can walk away. You can leave this planet, and I will never ask anything of you again. But if you stay, if you choose to honor the debt you owe me, then you must help me. You must help my people. Jace looked at her, his mind racing. He had always been someone who acted on instinct, who never thought too much about the consequences. But this was different. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Saving Lysira from the water had put him on a path he couldn't turn away from. And something deep inside him told him that if he didn't help her, something terrible would happen. Captain Jace Donovan had seen his fair share of strange and dangerous planets, but this one was different. The Vanguard, his starship, had been forced to land on the remote world after a mission gone wrong. The planet was beautiful but wild, with strange forests, towering cliffs, and swirling oceans that seemed almost alive. The crew had managed to secure the ship, but there were no signs of civilization anywhere. The planet seemed to be untouched, hiding secrets that no one had ever discovered. Jace, a man who loved adventure, decided to explore the coast of the planet's vast oceans. He hoped to find something that would make their mission worth the trouble. He was walking along the rocky shore when he heard something, a soft cry, like someone in distress. He quickly turned towards the sound, heart pounding in his chest. There, just ahead of him, a figure was struggling in the wild waters. The ocean waves were crashing against the rocks, and the figure was being pulled away by the current. It was a woman. She seemed to glow, her skin shimmering under the sun, as though made of the water itself. Her hair flowed behind her like ribbons of light. Jace didn't think twice. Without hesitation, he charged towards the water. The waves hit him hard, but he fought through them, reaching the woman just as she began to go under. He grabbed her arm tightly and pulled her close, struggling against the powerful current that threatened to pull them both under. The woman's eyes were wide with fear, but Jace could see a strange beauty in them, a mix of confusion and relief. She gasped for air, and Jace held her tighter, using every ounce of strength to keep her above water. His heart raced, not just from the physical strain, but from the overwhelming feeling that this wasn't just any ordinary rescue. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the waves calmed, and Jace managed to pull her to the shore. He dragged her up onto the sand, both of them gasping for breath. Jace collapsed beside her, exhausted, but he didn't let go of her. She was still trembling, her eyes staring at him with something he couldn't place. The woman sat up slowly, her glowing skin shimmering in the sunlight. She looked at him, eyes wide with shock and gratitude. You saved me," she said, her voice soft but clear. Her words were strange to Jace, unlike anything he had ever heard before. It sounded like a mix of music and water, flowing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Jace blinked, confused. He wasn't sure if she was speaking in some alien language, but the meaning behind her words was clear. He had saved her, and she was thankful. "My name is Jace," he said slowly, trying to make himself understood. "Are you all right?" The woman took a moment, still staring at him as though she were seeing something incredible. Then she nodded. "I am Lysira," she said, her voice calmer now. I owe you my life." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Don't worry about it. It's what anyone would have done." But Lysira seemed to be taking this much more seriously than Jace had expected. Her expression turned solemn, and she slowly reached out to touch his arm, as though she needed to make sure he was real. "You do not understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You have saved me, and in doing so, you have broken the old laws of my people." Jace blinked in confusion. The old laws. Lysira took a deep breath, her glowing skin reflecting the sunlight as she slowly stood up, still unsteady on her feet. "We, the Varelians, have a tradition. When a life is saved, a bond is formed. A debt is created, and it cannot be undone. The one who saves another's life must be honored, and their life is forever linked to the one they saved." Jace stared at her. "You're saying I'm tied to you now? Like, forever?" Lysira nodded. "Yes, and more than that. You have no idea what you have done, human. You have saved me. And because of that, you are now bound to my people, to my destiny." Jace shook his head. This was getting stranger by the second. He had saved her from drowning, yes, but he didn't feel like he'd done anything special. It was just instinct. But Lysira was looking at him as if he had changed the course of the universe. "Look, I don't know what you're talking about," Jace said, standing up and dusting off his uniform. "I just did what anyone would have done. You don't owe me anything."